After discovering the truth in Omori, I was left in such a shocked state that I didn't really get to voice my thoughts on it in the video. And so I thought that I would go back and record just a minute or two of me talking about some of my thoughts and analysis on the things that we learned so that I could make sure that I had, understood what was going on correctly to where I could go and record the finale knowing what had happened. Well, when I sat down to record those few minutes, I ended up recording for nearly an hour. So after some thought, I decided to put these thoughts into their own separate video, which is what this is. So if any of the wording sounds a little weird, it's because this was supposed to go at the end of the last part, but it was just too long, and I decided that I would just rather have its own separate thing for those who wanted to watch it, and those who didn't want to watch it didn't have to. Obviously, this is going to contain major spoilers for Omori, specifically the truth of Omori. So keep that in mind going into this, as well as the fact that this game does deal with very, very sensitive content, that I will put the content warnings on the screen. Please read them if you haven't already, because we're going to be talking in depth about some of these topics. So that's all. Please enjoy my thoughts. Hello! So I said that I had a lot of thoughts that I couldn't put into words at the time, which was very, very true. But now it is 2 weeks later, and I thought I should probably give these thoughts and allow you guys to respond to them before I record the finale. That way I can make sure that I have the correct understanding and interpretation of the things that were revealed in this episode. So first of all, I just wanted to say I am sorry I went so dead silent for the second half of this video. I got so invested into the game that I forgot I was recording a video and forgot I was playing a video game low-key. I tend to get so invested in things that what I physically am doing in the real world no longer matters. I'm just I'm there. So, yeah, I kind of just forgot to talk, but hope you didn't mind too much. I did want to go over a few of my thoughts that I was having during that time, I guess. Specifically when it came to the truth being revealed. I am the type of person who, once you give me an idea, once I think I understand something, I will grasp onto that very tightly, and it will take a lot to make me let go of that. That's why I tend to not make conclusions early, because once I make conclusions, it's hard for me to let go of that conclusion. So even though there were vague hints throughout the game that Mari might have ended her own life, I didn't say anything about it. A, because I didn't want to acknowledge it, because I didn't want it to be true, and B, because I knew that if I acknowledged that, then I would begin to believe that I would begin to accept that as truth instead of just a thought. So I waited until the game was very adamantly hey, this is what happened, when we were outside with Hiro and Kel and Aubrey looking at the tree stump, and at that point it's okay, that's what happened. You can't deny it, or at least so I thought. So fast forward through a lot of the other stuff, we go check on Basil, and then we go slumber party at Basil's house, and we go to sleep there, and we fall asleep, and you break the light bulb, you go through that boss battle sequence, which I actually had to do again to get here. Let me just say, it was just as traumatizing the second time. But then it shows you her, and at that point it just solidifies it again. I'm sure there won't be any consequences to that. So then we proceed to go down and learn the actual truth. And you can see it in my face. I will have, if I pick up a photo, when I picked up a photo that didn't make sense in the linear timeline, I would look confused for a split second, and then I would just go back to normal. And that is because I subconsciously, it's something I should probably work on. The second information doesn't fit into my perfectly crafted image of what something should be, it just gets discarded. So I'd see something and I'd go, huh, that's weird, that doesn't make sense. Oh well, and move on. So that's why if I clicked through some pictures quickly, or I seemed to not really acknowledge them for what they were, it's because my brain literally just did not want to. It's that doesn't make sense. So it must not be relevant. And so then when we learn that Sunny pushed her down the stairs. I got the gist of that. I got the fact that he pushed her down the stairs, but I wrongfully assumed in that moment, and obviously I didn't voice that, which is why I'm voicing it now, but I wrongfully assumed that that was essentially like the last straw for her, or the tipping point, and that's why Sunny blames himself, because he felt like the way that she had died was his fault and that he had pushed her to that, and that was what I assumed was going on. And I kept up with that line of thinking that I never said while I continued picking up the pictures, and even when they didn't make sense, you could see, I think specifically when I get to the picture of, at some point I see a picture of Basil, or Basil's hands, and I don't remember whether it's when I'm flipping through the pictures for the last time or not, but it's something to do with Basil, and I just kind of go, because I'm like, wait, if Sunny's there and Mori's there, who's this? Forgetting that the whole thing, of course, would have been from Basil's point of view. And then we finally get to the tree and the final picture under the tree, and I pick up the picture, and up until then I'm still going with my line of logic that really isn't logical at all, but I had accepted the fact that that was the way that Mori died as fact earlier, and so I didn't even stop to reconsider for a second that something else might have been going on until we were flipping through the pictures at the end, and at some point I say, wait, and that's when it finally clicked, wait, something's really wrong here. Like, more than just I can brush this aside, this was the tipping point for Mori, and more of a wait no, something more is going on here. And then I think it's the one where I'm assuming Basil's hands have the jump rope. You can see the shift in my expression, in that right there is the moment where I realized what was going on. I just wish I had voiced that a little more, but it's too late now. I just got so involved that I didn't think to. So just thought I'd give you a little rundown on what I was thinking during those moments. Anyways, with that aside, I wanted to move on to my thoughts on the whole thing. And I have a lot of notes here. Fun fact, this is my second time recording this section, and last time I recorded my thoughts for an hour of just me sitting here talking, and then I realized I left my fans on and it was really obnoxiously loud, so I decided to re-record it, and this time I'm going to try and keep it more brief. I'm going to try to condense my notes a little bit, but if you want more in-depth into any of it, I genuinely have all of this written down. It's like 8 pages, and I can just give y'all whatever parts you want. Anyways, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the events that lead up to the actual event that takes place, and I just want to state from the beginning, I don't think I'm wrong about the fact that it was an accident. I don't think Sunny had any malicious intent at all. I don't think he intended to push her down the stairs. I truly believe that that was just an accident. And so I wanted to talk about both Mori and Sunny's, or my interpretation of both Mori and Sunny's perspective on this. I may have mentioned a few times before, I don't know if I ever have actually mentioned in a video, but one of the core driving factors of this game to me is obviously its characters and the character depth, but I also like that each character has a driving force in the story. Like, they have a central internal conflict that really makes up their character. Like, if just off the top of my head, if I had to run them down, I would say that obviously Sunny's is his both not wanting to confront the truth and not wanting to run from the truth forever. So it's like a combination of that, like, push and pull internal conflict of, do I actively search out, do I go forward and face reality and face the possibility of reconnecting with people and telling everyone what happened, or do I keep running from it and keep living in my safety of this forever? And so that's his main conflict in the story. Basil's main conflict is his desire for security and guidance and support, which is also, in fact, Aubrey's internal conflict in the story, and her main character arc surrounds the fact that she doesn't feel supported. So neither Basil nor Aubrey feel supported, connected. They don't feel like they have anyone to turn to. Kel's main driving conflict in the story is the fact that he can't fully understand where everyone is coming from because he has the tendency to repress any sort of negative emotions, to always appear positive, and this means that he can't properly empathize with anyone because he doesn't allow himself to feel the full extent of his negative emotions. And Hiro, his central conflict is, put very mildly, his people-pleasing tendencies. He has a hard time saying no to people because he has a fear of upsetting people or people getting angry, or just he doesn't like conflict, and so he will go out of his way to avoid it, sometimes doing things that make him uncomfortable or apologizing for things that aren't his fault, or apologizing a lot. He apologizes a lot for things that he shouldn't have to apologize for. So Mari, her central conflict in the story, even though it's not really a part of the story and it's more of the setup to the story, but her main conflict within the overall concept of the story is her struggles with perfectionism. Now, since I want to start by talking about Mari, let's focus on that. Mari's perfectionism could have come from so many different places, and I think it is fun to theorize and analyze about where that may have come from. Spoiler alert, it's most likely your parents, even though we don't know much about them. In this game, it's been the parents a lot of times, and I really would not be surprised if that were the case again. She feels this need to be perfect, to not make mistakes, she sets impossible goals for herself and then beats herself up when she can't achieve them. This is something that is a little bit maybe into the personal headcanon idea, but I noticed a lot of times that the game mentions that she has a bad knee. Like, more times than you would think. If it was just like some throwaway line and be like, oh yeah, Mari has a bad knee, but it's like at least 3 or 4 times that it's like, oh hey, your sister Mari has a bad knee. It's like, okay? And obviously that could have something to do with like why she died by falling down the stairs, but that's a cheap answer and I don't like it. So I'm finding depth even if there isn't any depth there. And it says when we go into the treehouse that she used to play softball and she obtained the knee injury while playing softball. So I'm wondering if maybe softball was something that was really important to her and that she dedicated a lot of time and effort to, and something that she tried to be the best at, or tried to be quote-unquote perfect at. And she maybe pushed herself too far, maybe it really was just some accident that ended up injuring her knee and she was no longer able to play. And that's something that can be really traumatic when you're that young. Like, she probably experienced genuine grief over that if it was, you know, as important to her as this idea of mine would have it. But instead of letting herself lament over that for too long, I think she may have taken that frustration and grief and placed it into a new thing, the piano. And where she felt like she had failed at softball, maybe even feeling like it was whatever happened that got her knee injured was her fault, drove her to go into piano with the mindset of, I can't mess this up again. It's almost like starting a hobby over completely from scratch. And I think in some aspects it probably did end up being a good outlet of emotions for her, but her perfectionism made her take things way too far and take it too seriously and feel like she wasn't good at it if she wasn't perfect at it, because that is one of the core drives of her character. So when Sunny expressed that he wanted to possibly play with her, I'm sure that idea must have been really exciting, because I know, at least for me, the idea of sharing something that you're really passionate about with people that you care about is so exciting, because if you're really, really, really passionate about something, you invest a lot of yourself into it, which is one of the reasons I started making videos, is because I invest a lot of myself into these games. Whenever a game really connects with me, it becomes my personality and the only thing I think about for months. And yes, it annoys the crap out of everyone around me, but I like sharing it with people because it's like, hey, here's this thing that I have put so much of myself into. Most of the people in my life don't always appreciate that, as I'm sure some of you can probably relate. But that's just, I'm going off topic here, but like that's why when I say I appreciate the support, I mean I appreciate the support, because I don't always have that same level of support outside of this. It's really nice. Anyways, back to Mari. I'm sure it was really exciting for her to have Sunny want to play with her, but unfortunately her unhealthy view of being perfect likely ended up influencing more than just her. Whereas at first she was just hard on herself, I feel like it probably extended to her being hard on Sunny, and her taking out her frustrations at not being perfect out on Sunny and making him practice more than he wanted to. And when Sunny expressed irritation validly at the way he was being treated, it seemed to her like he didn't care about the violin or didn't care about music anymore. And when you invest yourself so much into something like that, and then to think that somebody doesn't care about it, it almost feels like they're saying that they don't care about you, which isn't the case at all, but that's sometimes how you can take it when you are just that deeply passionate about something. And so that probably hurt her a lot, especially when whatever events led up to their big fight I'm assuming just the buildup of all that frustration and hurt, whatever triggered it, there was a big fight where Sunny threw his violin down the stairs, and that was just the final straw for Mari in terms of her just letting out all of her frustration. And unfortunately, the victim of that frustration was Sunny, who, I mean, instruments are expensive, so I can see her getting irritated about him chucking it down the stairs. That's a lot of money. But more than that, it was her hurt about him not seeming to want to make the effort for her, to have that hope that somebody cared about the same thing that she did, the thing that she loved so much, the thing that she was putting so much of herself into, and then have them turn around and be like, no, actually, I don't care about this thing because, like, it's a little hard, so, like, I don't want to anymore. Obviously, that's not what Sunny was thinking, but it was a misunderstanding that cost them everything. On the flip side of that, we have Sunny. And while I feel like I don't understand the motivations behind all of Sunny's actions, I do feel like he may have really wanted to get into the violin to have something to connect with his sister over. Sunny, to me, seems like, as somebody who is constantly, you know, sitting on the sidelines of the group, observing things going on, he doesn't seem to express everything that he's thinking or feeling a lot, and I don't know if that's just because he doesn't want to, he doesn't know how, or he just doesn't feel comfortable with that, I don't know. But he doesn't communicate in the typical way, which is totally okay. But his method of communication was to speak her language, which was music, and so he wanted to get into that for her, to express how much he looked up to her, how much he loved her, how much he cared about her. I can imagine he probably put up with her nagging in the beginning because it was just a part of the process, but as time went on and as the date of the recital got closer, she probably started getting more and more irritated with him, partially snappy with him, because despite the, you know, like, perfect image that she seems to have in the headspace, it is important to remember that she was a kid. She was just 15. Even though she was older than Sunny, like, she was still very young and will behave very irrationally when hurt or stressed, which is undoubtedly what she was with the recital coming up. But with the more extreme that she got, the more confused and hurt he got. The decision to throw the violin down the stairs was probably an impulsive one, just done in the heat of the moment, anger, hurt, frustration. Like I keep saying, he was a kid. Kids do impulsive stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he was immediately hit with some form of guilt because, yeah, that was an expensive violin. But before he even had the chance to try and fix it or apologize, Mori probably got even angrier at him. One thing that's pretty typical in people who don't tend to communicate as well their intense emotions is they also don't really like to be around intense emotions, so when Mari kind of blew up at him, he tried to run. At least, this is what I'm assuming. And Mari blocked his path, obviously stunned and shocked as to the fact that he just threw his violin down the stairs, and so she wanted answers. She was confused and hurt and wanted answers, and he was hurt and scared and tried to run, and she blocked his path, and I believe that's when he pushed her, not thinking about the fact that she was standing at the top of the stairwell, and he pushed her and had to watch as she fell on top of the violin, and he had to see the consequences of his actions being something much more than a broken violin this time. So yes, I do 100% believe that that was a complete accident. I don't think Sunny was like, ooh, I'm gonna get revenge on her for pushing me too far by pushing her down the stairs, because that's just, nobody does that. Siblings fight, that's something that happens. You don't think in the heat of the moment, you push people. Sunny just wasn't aware, wasn't paying attention, and it happened, and it's awful and it's horrific, but it happened, and it's just, that's the tragedy of it all, is that nobody in that situation was really at fault. It was a horrible accident. Now, before we get to the final character I really wanted to talk about, sure nobody can guess who that is, I want to go over my understanding of the events that happened after that so that I can make sure that we are on the same page and that my understanding of this wasn't off. Basil must have been witness to the beginning of that fight. I'm assuming he was probably coming over for some reason and saw them fighting and just kind of hid. We saw from one of his pictures that he was kind of like in the door frame hallway, kind of just hiding out of sight, probably because they were fighting and he didn't want to get involved or get in the way, because Basil doesn't have siblings of his own, and so while I can imagine he understands that they fight sometimes. It must have been a little scary. He probably didn't want to make the situation worse than it already was, and so he was just like, oh, I'll hide and wait, and that is how he unfortunately ended up witnessing the entire thing, to which both him and Sunny were left in a state of shock. They took Mari's lifeless form and they took her upstairs to her bed, and that is where Sunny was just in a complete state of like horrified shock. Now, I mentioned earlier that I think Basil's driving motivations in the story is his desire for security and stability and comfort and just that like secure place. And unwisely, unhealthily, his secure place in that regard was Sunny. Sunny wasn't doing so great there. Obviously, he was very, very unstable. And so for Basil to see Sunny in a state that unstable, his world probably crashed down around him, because the person that he looked to as his rock, as his sense of support, was no longer stable, and that probably freaked him out. And so he did the only thing he could think of, which was to come up with a plan to make it better. I'm assuming Basil was the one with the idea, and he told Sunny his idea. And Sunny was either just too in shock or too scared to do anything other than agree. So they worked together and took Mari's body out into the backyard. And that is where they worked together to stage it, to make it look like she had taken her own life. I'm gonna be totally honest. Basil was the primary source of just shock and confusion and frustration since I played this section of the game, because no matter what angle I looked at it, it just didn't make sense. I understood that he was desperately trying to protect Sunny, but the fact that that was what he thought of is just so scary to me, and I wish we got to look more into Basil's home life backstory, because clearly there was something going on in his life before Mari's death, whether it was just genuine mental unwellness or some other event that caused him to be in just a state of not having a healthy mindset. That's just not something a typical 12-year-old child would think of, and that's really scary to me. I will say right off the bat, though, before I go any more in-depth into Basil's character, I'm not mad at him. Whenever I say I'm uncertain about him, it's just in terms of, I don't want to say he makes me uncomfortable, but he's always just, you know when characters are a little bit too nice? That's what he was for most of the game, and so now knowing this, it's just really unsettling. So it's gonna take me a while to fully get accustomed to everything. I'm not mad at him. I just wanted to know that right away. I may not 100% know how I feel about him, but I'm not mad at him. I don't think he had any malicious intent, no more than Sunny did when he pushed him down the stairs, when he pushed her down the stairs. I don't think Basil is some evil mastermind manipulator who coerced Sunny into doing this. He was just scared, and no matter how horrifically messed up the plan was, he really was, it was just a fear response. It may seem unnatural, because, I mean, it is, but I don't harbor a grudge against him at all. And besides, the guilt of his actions is far more of a punishment than anything else would be, so I just need you to know that I feel so horrifically bad for him, and I'm not mad at him at all. But back to the concept of Sunny being Basil's rock, that, I think, is where their dynamic is really unhealthy. It's even before Mari's death, it was unhealthy, because placing a lot of trust in someone isn't bad. Having somebody that you trust, having somebody that you go to, even just to talk to, that you trust with your secrets, isn't a bad thing. But having somebody you trust so much that you turn a blind eye to all of their faults that is unhealthy. Don't do that. A good relationship built on anything means you need to also be able to see their flaws and trust in them regardless, not trust them so much that you no longer see those flaws. I hope that made sense. Basil's first reaction to seeing the incident occur was not anything to do with Mari, but it was instead strictly on how to help Sunny. And I'm not saying Basil's a bad person for that or anything. Once again, don't get me wrong. It's clear that he just has, like, I think it definitely got considerably worse over time, especially after Mari's death. But even beforehand, I feel like it was definitely a little bit, like in the beginning, it was like, oh, maybe Basil should work on this. And I'm not saying it's irredeemable either. I'm just saying that it wasn't healthy, and it's definitely not healthy now. But anyways, Sunny disappeared for a few years after that, obviously, and I think Basil originally justified all of his actions and repressed the feelings of guilt with the pretense of, I did it to protect Sunny, and any guilt he did, he could just bury away, because he could just keep telling himself, I did it for Sunny, I did it for Sunny, I did it for Sunny. And in the beginning, I think he told himself that, oh, it was something behind Sunny, it's just another one of those ways to justify it, but based on his later interactions with Sunny in the game, mainly, this is gonna sound really stupid. I've been calling it the bedroom brawl just because I have to kind of speak for some things in code, because whenever I'm like rambling about it to my mom, who thankfully still listens to me about this, and I don't want my sister, who's also playing the game, to understand what's going on, I speak in code. So anyways, after the fight between Basil and Sunny in Basil's room, after that, what was I talking about? Oh, but yeah, in the events of the bedroom brawl, that concept of something behind you, the concept of something behind Sunny in the beginning was probably another way of justifying what he did, of throwing the blame off to someone other than Sunny, because he wholeheartedly believes in Sunny to the point where he's willing to turn a blind eye to all of Sunny's faults. I feel like over the years it went from a, oh yeah, surely it was something behind Sunny, cause it couldn't have been you, Sunny, turned into more of a, there was something behind Sunny, like genuine delusion that he ended up falling for himself, and that was just really scary, and my heart really hurt that entire fight. If you couldn't tell, I'm sure you could. I was suffering immensely. Yeah, all these kids really need a hug. I hope Basil and Sunny are okay. I really do. I think those are all the thoughts I generally have about the truth, and that's where I'm at in terms of what I think happened. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. If I'm just totally off about all of this, please let me know. The reason I'm doing this before recording the finale is I want to go into the finale and the end of the game knowing the context of what happened. Because it would suck, I think, to finish the game and then go back and be like, haha, yeah, you were wrong about all of this. So I am not recording the finale until I get your guys' feedback on this. And until I don't sound like this anymore, because, you know, I've been sick. So I'm gonna wait for this to actually finish clearing up before I record the final episode. I don't blame Sunny. I don't blame Basil. My heart just hurts a lot. As for what's going to happen next, well, I mean, first of all, we're going to hope that Basil and Sunny are alive. I heard the ambulance. I'm assuming we're going to the hospital, which, I mean, how are we going to explain that to Cal, Hero, and Aubrey, and Polly? I love Polly. I don't think I've mentioned that yet. I literally love Polly. My gosh, that poor woman needs a hug so badly. She's really trying her best, and I love and appreciate her. I appreciate what she's doing, and I wish I could tell her that. God, I feel bad for the poor person who's going to walk in on that. But also somebody needs to walk in on that, because somebody needs to call the ambulance, and we need to get these boys to the hospital quick, and I hope they're both okay. If they are both okay, then what comes next, I'm assuming, is telling everybody the truth of what happened, and that is something I'm very excited and very scared for, because I love emotional realness, but also this is going to hurt. I have faith in their friends, like Basil said, that they will forgive them. However, I believe that it will take some time, and it will take a little bit for them to fully come to terms with it, obviously, because they just came to terms with Mari's death the first time, and especially Hero with dealing with blaming himself all these years for Mari's death, and finally coming to terms with the fact that it wasn't his fault. And I could go so much more in depth into that, but I've already been talking for quite a while, so I will save that for another time, or the comments. But like, to finally come to terms with the truth, and then to be smacked in the face and told, haha, yeah, that truth that you finally just came to terms with after 4 years, not the truth after all. Sorry, and the friends that you just rebuilt your trust with, haha, yeah, they're the ones who are the reason that Mari is dead. And just, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. And I do trust that they will come around in the end, but it will hurt, and it will damage the trust that this friend group just got back, and that was gonna hurt, and it's all gonna hurt, and my heart's gonna hurt, and I'm gonna cry, and it's gonna be so good, and it's gonna be so bad, but it's gonna be so good. But I hope they come together in the end, because my heart literally cannot take anything else. Anyways, I've been talking for probably a long time. Let's go look. I've been talking for 47 minutes. Who let me do this? I'm so sorry. Anyways, I'm gonna go now. Thanks for watching. If you watched all the way through this, I love you. Why do I do this? Why do I care so much about these games? I love that I care so much sometimes, and then other times I'm like, There were literally so many other things I was supposed to do tonight. It's okay, because I had fun. That's all. If you want any further thoughts on any of these, trust me, I've got them. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time for the finale.